Hey everyone, Jeremy here, host of the podcast. I'd like to ask you a favor. My hope has always been to grow this podcast. Adding reviews helps that. If you like the podcast, would you consider going on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leaving us a review? I'd really love to hear your feedback on the show. I appreciate it. And now, on to the show. Hey everyone, welcome to The Scene. I'm Jeremy Houtsma and I am your host. My guest today is Damon Atkinson, the drummer for one of the most influential bands in the Midwest emo scene, Braid. He's also the drummer for Hey Mercedes. In this episode, we talk about Damon's history with Braid and Hey Mercedes. We then talk about Damon's journey to sobriety and tackling his mental health struggle with anxiety. Get ready for a candid and honest look at one of the great drummers of the scene. Let's get to it, and let me welcome you to the scene. What kind of mic are you using?
I don't know. It's it's like it's one of these guys.
Almost like a or something like that.
I had to do an interview because I used to do the Vans Warped Tour, and there was some documentary or something that they were doing, and they're like they sent me this microphone, and I was like, "Do you want me to send it back?" They're like, "No, just keep it."
Well, that's nice.
It's like, cool.
Pre-recording equipment. What did you used to do for Warped Tour?
I was my official title was production office manager.
Okay.
So I did I was in charge of the schedule each morning.
Okay.
Which was
a
beast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the guy that everyone was waiting outside of the production office. They were all waiting for me to finish the schedule, and
that's a lot of pressure.
And, yeah, and then when we had to make changes, I had to scramble and do all that stuff. And then I also handled all of our Canadian customs and immigrations.
Ooh, that is a big endeavor.
Yeah, and we used to go in and out of Canada twice. So I had to advance the entire tour, every single person traveling on the tour, every single bus, every single semi truck.
Oh my gosh. What was it like dealing with borders and customs?
It was intimidating.
Yeah.
I mean, it like everything had to be right. So basically I had to, like as soon as the tour started, if not even before the tour started, I had to start reaching out to literally everybody on the tour. So every single band, all of our staff and crew, we alone, Warped Tour, we had 18 buses full of people. Wow. And so I had to get everyone's passport number, where they were born, their full name, stuff like that. And then I had to put it all into a spreadsheet, and I had to alphabetize it, but I also had to group it by if it was like Vans Warped Tour production people or if it was an artist. And then I would have to fax all of that in to the border in advance, because it was a lot of people. And then they would go through it and they would start running through all the names. And if anyone got flagged for any reason, they would send me a list of people that were flagged. And I would usually get two lists. One list was, these people will likely be brought in for additional questioning. And these people absolutely should not show up to the border. And if they do, they'll be arrested. Yeah.
Wow. So then what would they have to do? Just like those people have to catch up with the tour after it was done?
Yeah. Yeah. And some people, some people knew that they had offenses. The big ones are DUI. Canada's not cool with that.
Yeah.
And then anything assault related, it just depends. And then there were people that got flagged. And so when I would get this list, I'd have to reach out to everybody and say, hey, come see me. And I would let them know that they're on a list.
Yeah.
And there are some people that are like, what? I've never even gotten a speeding ticket. And what that meant was their name and their date of birth, and there was something about that was close enough to someone else who had a record.
Yeah.
And that's why they would have to be brought in for additional questioning. And once they got brought in, they got asked a couple questions, and then they're like, oh yeah, you're not the guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we used to send, there were a number of people on our crew that could never get in. And there was enough of them that we would put them on their own bus. Like we'd fill a whole bus, and they would go from the last city in the US to the next city in the US, and they would just skip Canada altogether because They
Why
couldn't
even
be.
bother? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So your mic is clipping just a little bit. Would you mind just
Okay.
turning it down just a tiny bit?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not to
How's
be that
that?
guy.
Is
That's
that any better?
that's better. Yeah.
Okay,
So I used to
cool. Yeah,
live
it's
right by the Canadian border. In fact, we're moving back up there again in June. Um,
wow.
so yeah, the Bellingham, Washington. It's basically like an hour from Vancouver.
Yeah,
Uh, and yeah, sometimes I felt like the border agents were just incredibly bored,
yeah,
and would just fuck around with people
yeah.
like just for the fun of it. I remember trying to cross the border one time, and I'll make this a short story because nobody wants to hear from me. They want to hear from you. But I was working at a restaurant at the time, and we had this big Chesterfield fried chicken sign. And one of the dishwashers was like, "That's mine. I'm taking it home." So one day I just took it just to see if he would even notice, and I put it in
Yeah.
the back of my car. And I went up to Canada, completely forgot it was in there. They pull us, me and a friend aside, and they're like, "What's the deal with the chicken sign?" And I just start laughing. So I'm like, "Oh, it's a big, light up sign that says
Yeah.
Chester's Fried Chicken, right?" Like,
Right.
and so I just start laughing. And I was like, "Oh, I just took, it was something from a restaurant I worked at. I took it, just kind of as a joke." And the border agent looks at me and he goes, "You realize what you're telling me, right?" And I was like, "No." Like, he's like, "You're trying to bring stolen goods into Canada
Oh, yeah.
because nobody knows that you have this." And I was like, "What?" And like my face went flush, and I was trying to, like, it was a Monday, so everybody was off, and I couldn't get a
Yeah.
hold of. They were like, "If somebody can tell us that they know that you have the sign, it's not stolen, like we're good."
Oh my God.
And so I'm calling everybody,
Yeah.
and I'm there for like 45 minutes at least, like an hour.
Yeah.
And the border agent is like, "Look, we can obviously see that you're kind of like shaken up about this. Like, it's not, we'll let you go. Like, obviously you're telling the truth."
Yeah.
I go back to my friend and he's like, "They were making fun of you." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "The border agent went back there and was like shaking, like
Mhm.
like that." And I was like,
Totally.
"Bunch of dicks." I
Yeah,
thought
they're bored.
Canadians
They
supposed
were
to be
looking
nice.
for yeah, they were looking for entertainment. That's
Yeah.
all it was.
So that's a massive logistical
Yeah.
thing on your end.
Yeah,
Um,
it was crazy.
yeah. How many years did you do that for?
I did it 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 5 years.
Okay.
And the last year, I remember my immigration manifest, I had 950 people on it. And then 2013, Kevin Lyman decided he didn't want to go to Canada. So the person who took my job didn't have to do Canadian immigration or customs. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a massive thing. Did you know Jason Trabue at all?
Oh yeah, I love trades.
Yeah, so he was the last person that I had. No,
Yeah.
sorry, I had Chad Epstein. Two episodes ago, I had Jason on there, and he was kind of talking about the logistics of doing, everything he was doing with Jimmy Eat World and A Perfect Circle and all that stuff. And he
Yeah.
said he really enjoyed the what did he say? He enjoyed the logistics of it all. Um, but you really had to kind of like be into that kind of stuff in order
Yeah.
to kind of make it work. So
Totally. Yeah.
so
And I mean, I didn't really I mean, I enjoyed the responsibility, right? I mean,
sure.
it's like, a world's worth of responsibility on my shoulders to get this entire tour in and out of Canada with as few problems as possible, right? Because it's not like we ever had an off day. We'd go from Detroit to Toronto, and it's so short, even though there's a border crossing that anything could happen. We never booked an off day. It was, we finish in Detroit, everyone gets on the bus as early as possible, 10 p.m., whatever it was. You go to the border, and then, you just hope for the best.
Yeah.
So it's like all of that responsibility and people, because I was the guy, right? I didn't have a team of people. I was the guy. And so when people were having problems, they're calling me, and then, the one funny story. It wasn't funny to me at the time, but I was so tired. I forget where it was that we were crossing, but we had a couple hours, so we all, most of us went to bed. The bus driver is always really good about like, they'll usually pull over before the border and they'll come through the bus and wake everyone up. Um, and I guess I was just passed out. I was just beat. And so I woke up to a barking dog in my face because I think I was sleeping on the bottom bunk. And so my curtain was closed. They opened the curtain. There's a dog barking in my face and these guys screaming
Oh my
because
God.
they thought, and it was the border agents with their dogs coming through, sniffing for drugs, bombs, whatever. They were led to believe and they were told that everyone was off the bus. So none of my bus mates woke me
Told
up.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy who's in charge
Right.
of Canadian immigration and yeah, they forgot to wake me up. And so that was yeah,
It was
that was a good
terrifying.
one. It's one way to wake up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't, I don't think I would find that very funny either.
No,
Uh,
no, no.
so where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a town called Grafton, Wisconsin. It's about
Okay.
30 minutes north of Milwaukee. But yeah, I grew up there, played music from an early age. I was just surrounded by it. There was bands practicing in my basement when I was a kid. And so that was the first time at a very young age, probably 2 or 3 years old, was the first time I laid eyes on a drum set.
Yeah.
And it was just around, and I thought the guys were so cool, and I was just really, really drawn to it. So from a very early age, that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah. Did like your parents play drums or did they play? I'm assuming they played music. That's what they were having basement practices.
Well, no, so my parents are split, and so my mom raised my brother and I, but my but two of my uncles played music,
Okay.
and so they were all close, and she just their bands or their friends' bands, whatever, and they were always around, and my mom would take us to go see him play, and it was just always around and always there. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And
Yeah.
then one time, I think I was just getting a little like, I don't remember exactly, but I think I was likely in this sort of mindset telling everybody that, well, you just wait. One day I'm going to be a huge rock star. And my uncles who played music, they're like, hey, listen, not everybody makes it, right? Not everyone becomes a huge rock star. So maybe you should, think about something to fall back on, something else to do. And I was offended by that. I was like, well, what, it doesn't sound like you're encouraging me.
Yeah.
What are they trying to tell me to, I should give up on music and go try to be a doctor or a lawyer or, something else. And it kind of bummed me out. But then it wasn't until a little bit later, when I had some bands and we had, played shows and I grew up a little bit, that I kind of realized what they were talking about. It didn't have to be a doctor or a lawyer. It could
Right.
be anything. So I made a point to be very active in the music business side of it. Right.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
even though I was the drummer of the bands, I was always the one that was just really detail oriented. And, you know, I was the one, trying to book all the shows and make the flyers and, hand them out. And, I learned how to screen print so we could screen print our own t-shirts. I used to screen print our own t-shirts and stickers in my basement and in my bedroom and,
That's great.
did all that kind of stuff. So that was sort of, and then fast forward, I ended up becoming a guitar tech and a drum tech and a tour manager and a production manager and, doing all that kind of stuff. But I've always had, the love of playing music and writing
Sure.
music. But I've always had that background of like, yeah, I'll do whatever, I
Yeah.
just want to be in it. So this
Yeah.
is,
Around music
yeah,
and music and stuff.
yeah.
So you lived in around Milwaukee, up into, and you had a few bands. Like when did you start getting in some bands? How old are you?
I mean, my first band, I was 11.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
pretty
I was
early.
11. Yeah, yeah. I was 11 years old, and my friend Dan and I had started a band. And initially, because he knew how to play drums, I knew how to play drums and guitar. So we're like, well, let's start a band. But I guess I'll play guitar and Dan, you play drums because whatever. And then we ended up finding a guitar player, and then Dan ended up, he wanted to sing. So I went back to the drums and whatever. And, and then other bands from there and, a couple other bands from there. But yeah, 11 years old is when I started writing music with
Yeah.
people.
Did you do guitar first, or did you do drums first and then kind of twiddle around with the guitar as well?
No, I started on drums, and then my brother got a guitar, and one of my other uncles, he was a bass player, guitar player. So it was just kind of always around, and I was like, well, let me just kind of tinker around on this thing and see what this is about. And then I would, started writing songs, probably not great songs, but there were still songs. And so that's how that worked. I was a drummer first, but I also knew how to play guitar. And again, thinking back, like I would rather have been a drummer in my first band, but I just wanted to have a band.
Right.
We were 11 years old.
Yeah, that's really young to be.
Yeah.
Like when you were like doing some of your first bands, like what kind of style of music were you kind of drawn to into making and also listening to?
Yeah. I mean, at that time we were listening to, punk rock, we were skateboarders. So, you know, skate rock kind of stuff, but like 7 Seconds and Bad Brains and Misfits and Danzig, then Dead Kennedys, stuff like that. And so we just kind of wanted to do punk rock stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was, yeah, that's pretty much what it was. It was just like play fast. Yeah, and just be angsty.
Why the drums though for you? Like why was that particularly appealing to you?
I mean, I literally to this day, the image of the first time I saw a drum kit is just burned into my memory. Thank God. And maybe one day that'll go, which will be sad. But I mean, I remember in our basement, I can picture myself walking down the stairs and seeing that drum kit. And then they picked me up and sat me down on the throne. And I felt like they just put me on top of Mount Everest because I was so small and it was so big. And I don't know, I was just drawn to it. And then, my mom's friend, who was the drummer of this band, he was super cool. And he would, he'd take his drums, I go play gigs, and then he'd come back and set them up, and encourage me to play them. He, I guess, gave me a couple lessons, but I never really took drum lessons. I was just kind of always around it. And they had a kit for me to just kind of play on, and then as I got a little bit older, I put my headphones on and put a, record on or a cassette tape, and I would try to play along to stuff. And that's really what did it,
Yeah, that's pretty incredible not having lessons, especially for the drum style, I guess, that you guys had in Braid.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of different kind of time signatures and a little crazy on that. I think that's like even playing that stuff on guitar is incredibly difficult to me. I always thought that having your hands and feet at the same time doing different things has always been something that like I've admired because it's not in my wheelhouse whatsoever. So I definitely admire drummers in that way. Did you end up going to college in Illinois or?
No. So the rest of the Braid guys they all went to college in Champaign-Urbana, the University of Illinois. But one of my bands back at home up in Wisconsin, we had done a couple shows. Like we didn't really tour, but we had gone and played a couple shows in Illinois, and we ended up playing with Braid. And that was the first time I had ever heard of them. And they were cool to us, and we really liked their music. So I was a fan of Braid before being in it. But then we decided that we were going to end that band, but we wanted to play a couple last shows.
Sure.
Around the Milwaukee area. And we were thinking of bands that we wanted to come join us. And I was like, oh, it'd be cool if Braid would come and play. I mean, that'd be awesome to have that. So I got in touch with them and said, "Do you want to do it?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." So they came up and played these couple last shows, and not long after that, they were playing some college show in Illinois, and that's when their original drummer Roy had told them, I guess on the drive back or something, he's like, "Hey, I just want to let you guys know that I know you guys have plans for touring and all that stuff, but I'm married and I want to have a family, and I don't think touring's for me, so I'm done." And so they had to think like, "Oh shit, we got a tour booked. What are we gonna do? Our drummer just quit.
Yeah.
Who do we know?" And they're thinking of people that a a drummer that could play that weird fucking braid stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So someone who could play that, but also someone who's available and not already in another band that's, actively touring. And luckily, I guess I made an impression on them as a drummer, and they knew for a fact that I didn't have a band because they just played my band's
Right.
last
Right.
shows.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So like, well, we're pretty sure he's available, and we're pretty sure he could play the parts. So Bob Nana called me and yeah, offered me to come out as like a fill-in drummer. And it wasn't until I think the first run I did with them, which I think was a short, like 3-week Midwest and East Coast run, and I think it was on the way back when they're like, "Hey, we've been telling you that this was like a trial run," which I guess it kind of was, but do you want to be in the band? And I was like, "Fuck yeah, it was awesome." Yeah, yeah.
Was that in
But I think
97?
Yeah, March of '97 was the first tour I did with them. I was 21. Um, but talking about the weird braid drumming, and then going back to what we were just talking about with me. I'd never taken a drum lesson. Um, I've wondered this throughout my life. Had I at an early age taken drum lessons, would I have felt the sort of mental / artistic freedom to do that kind of stuff? Or would I have been a little bit more like grounded, read music, stick to this? I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
I don't know, possibly not, but I think not having lessons and just having that freedom to get behind a drum kit and listen and learn other songs, but then kind of do my own stuff, I think that really helped.
Yeah.
And I've said this before in other interviews. I give a lot of credit to Braid's original drummer, Roy, because even though the bands I played in prior to joining Braid, we had, we would do some weird, I would do some weird drum stuff, but I hadn't played the kind of stuff or at that level that Roy, the parts that Roy wrote for Braid. So joining Braid really allowed me to explore this other side of drumming, this other side of weird time signatures and weird syncopations, and just kind of being kind of weird on that stuff. And so I've told them that before too. And like I said, I've said it in interviews before that I have a lot of, I have to thank him a lot for, writing those kind of parts, and then me getting the opportunity to get into that band and explore that type of drumming, which was awesome,
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. What was that first tour, that 3-week tour? If you can remember, what was that like for you being as a new member of the band, so to speak? Like, are you playing everything exactly as Roy played it, or are you putting your own little spin on it?
I mean, I was certainly trying to do as much as Roy did, but his style and my style are just a little bit different, right? Every drummer is completely different. Um, we Yeah, there were some little tinkery things that he would do that I didn't understand what he was doing them, so I just kind of didn't do that.
Yeah.
But I tried to get as close to it as possible. But it was mainly like me. I remember because I didn't, when Bob had called me to ask me to go on that tour, there wasn't a lot of time. If I'm not mistaken, it was a matter of weeks.
That to learn all those. those parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, I forget how, I mean, maybe, I don't remember how many songs I learned. It was either 9 or 13. And of course, it wouldn't be an even number being Braid. It'd have to be some, yeah.
Yeah.
But but that was it. And I think they knew that too. They're like, well, we have to make a set list, right? We can't expect this guy to learn every song we've ever done. I mean, their
Right.
first record had 26 songs on it, so like, we had a fairly small and reasonable size set list. But yeah, he gave me the songs. I think he sent me either a CD or a mixtape of the songs just so I had them.
Yeah.
And I remember as soon as I got that in the mail, that's all I did. I went to work, I came up from work, and I just listened. And I had a notebook and I wrote notes. I don't know how to write music, but I just wrote the notes that I thought would make the most sense. And I remember going down to Champaign for the first time to go practice with those guys before the tour started. That whole train ride down was just like 5 hours. That's all I did. I just had my headphones on and I just
You were in
practiced. Yeah. And it worked out well. Yeah, it was
it, man.
good.
Then you went into the band in '97.
Yeah.
When did you guys start working on Frame and Canvas? Which is 27, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost 30 years old. It's like having a
27.
kid.
Yeah.
Your kid can
Yeah.
already drink.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what
Yeah.
benefits they have at 27, but
Yeah, I don't know. Probably, yeah, not much. Well, I guess that's what is that the year after you get kicked off your parents' insurance.
insurance, yeah.
Right.
Rite of passage. Yeah.
So Frame and Canvas is hopefully a responsible adult at this point.
Yeah.
uh, uh, I don't. I mean, we never. I don't think we ever really set out and said, okay, let's write a record. We were kind of always working on songs. I mean, we were touring a lot.
Yeah.
So it was sort of tough to do that. But yeah, I mean, we spent some time, in Champaign, and then Bob's parents lived, in a suburb of Chicago, and we go down to their basement and write songs. I mean, I still to this day remember being in Bob's parents' basement writing A Dozen Roses.
Mhm.
And which I think was I think that was the first song I ever wrote with them. And then some of the songs on Frame and Canvas were songs that they already had that Roy had already written drum parts to. So it was sort of my take on that. Yeah.
I always thought the new Nathan D choice, that intro, was that what did you write that intro?
Yeah.
How'd you come up with that intro? It's awesome.
We were in, so the Braid guys lived in this old kind of crappy apartment kind of thing. And there was a small basement. And so they used to practice in the basement. And we were down there practicing and they all went, they wanted to take a break, but I was like, no, I'm good. I'm going to stay down here and I'm just going to tinker around. And I literally just came up with it. I don't know how. It just happened. It really just, it's not like this is something that was in my head, from, years prior. It just kind of came up and the guys came back down and I was like, hey, I don't know what this is, but I got this thing. And
so it was written around that sort of drum intro.
It was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is that the usual way? Like how would Braid write a song together? Like what was that process kind of like?
I mean, generally, I think, specifically to Braid, I don't know, because I'm thinking about all the other bands that I've been in, Hey Mercedes, and all the bands prior to Braid, on how that was always done. But generally, Bob or Chris would have a part. They'd have like they would just start playing something, and then if Chris came to practice with something, he'd be playing just this one part. He wouldn't necessarily come. No one would ever come with a full song. Okay. They would just come with a part. And then, if Chris was playing a part, then Bob would try to find something that kind of went along with that. And then Todd would just kind of figure out a bass line to go over that. And I would figure out, drum stuff. And then, once we got like a part, we all had an idea what we're playing for that part. And we would play that part over and over. And that's all we had.
Yeah.
And then somebody would say, oh, how about what if we go here? And what if we do this? And and it was very organic. There was never one person who came with all the songs. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a very organic, we all just got in a room and did it.
Yeah. How heavily did you guys tour on Frame and Canvas?
Heavy. I mean, sadly we were only a band for another year after that came out. But we toured extensively. I mean, we did just nonstop. I mean, we went to Europe twice. We went to Japan. Oh, wait, no, we didn't go to Japan. Yeah, we did. Yes, we did. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we just did a lot of touring. And so, the recording process of Frame and Canvas was really fast. We recorded and mixed it in 5 days. We drove out to
It's crazy.
We drove out to DC and we recorded at Inner Ear Studios with Jay Robbins. But I don't know if it was just financially, we only had enough money to be there for 5 days. I don't remember why it was only 5 days. But that's all it was. But I think the reason it worked out okay, because a lot of, even, looking at like the Hey Mercedes records that we did, we took a lot longer than that. But also pretty much all of these songs, all but one maybe, we had been playing out live for months, right? So they're really well rehearsed.
Yeah.
And we knew how to play these songs. So when we got into the studio, we just went, and there wasn't a ton of, listen, I'm not saying we're perfect, right? I'm not saying like, we're flawless. It was all one take, it wasn't that, right? But I think, there was, not remembering all the details. I can't say, oh, by the way, New Nathan Detroit's, that was a one take for all of us. Sure. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it was. Probably not. But yeah, we were pretty well rehearsed. So it just kind of worked, But yeah, we toured as soon as we were done recording, we were still playing shows and just waiting, playing shows while Polyvinyl's getting everything together to release the record. And then we just toured nonstop once it came out.
What was it like touring for you? Like, that's kind of a big question or like a generalized question, but like, is it something that you enjoyed? Was it something that was like stressful or like, what was it like for you?
No, I mean, we loved it. I mean, we were all young and that's all we wanted to do. And the fact that we were doing it, even if we were, playing in a basement for 20 people, that didn't matter to us. We didn't, me as a kid, I told the story earlier about when I was a young kid and I was telling everybody I'm going to be a huge rock star. I was humbled and I kind of got that out of me and I just wanted to play music. And I played punk rock, punk rock. If you're in a punk rock band and you love doing it, you do not have your eyes set on selling out Madison Square Garden.
Sure. Yeah.
You just want to play shows and it didn't matter to us. I think after because we toured a lot, after all the touring we were doing, I mean, there definitely were times where we'd show up to a venue, a basement or something. And we were just like, what is this? How does this work?
Why?
Like, how is this? This can't, and we all have our stories about certain shows we played. And there was a show, I want to say it was in Vancouver, I think. And when this plays back, if, Bob, Todd, or Chris are watching this, they'll remember and they'll either be like, dude, no, you had it wrong. But I think it was in Vancouver. We played a show once and like there were so few people there that wherever this was, like sort of like a VFW hall kind of thing.
Yeah.
There were so few people there. The cleaning crew had showed up and they didn't think anything special was going on. They turned the lights on and they were like sweeping. And in my mind, I think at that point, we instead of interrupting them and being like, no, we're you can't do that. We're playing a show. I think we were just like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
There's like hardly anyone here, but the point to all of that is it didn't matter to us. We loved it. And we loved I think what we loved most about touring, um, that I think when we do get back, when we do go out and play shows now, 20, 30 years later, there is an element of that we still do enjoy, but it was the camaraderie. It was all the shenanigans that went on in the van. It was because we didn't tour in a bus, we toured in a van, and we it just, we really enjoyed it. And looking back at that time, not to sound old or sound like the cool guy with the old, the old stories or whatever, but this is before cell phones and before internet. There's no Google Maps. There's none of that. We're literally reading a map, and then we'd pull over and get on a payphone and call the kid who booked the show at the VFW hall. And we'd say, "Hey, we're in town. What's the address? Where do we go?"
Where are you? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then we'd, it was probably usually Todd, and he'd have like scraps of paper, and he'd be on the phone, and he'd be jotting down, take a left here, take a right here. It's the house with the cream colored shutters, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how we did it. And so it was like this, it was the camaraderie, but it was also sort of like, it felt like we were, fucking Lewis and Clark or something, like
Yeah.
just,
Just
trying to, yeah. And like, how do we crisscross the country with, an Atlas and make it work? And so, and then there's flat tires, and there's, radiator overheating, but it's, you go through all that stuff, and it just makes us, closer, like, hey, we did that. It wasn't easy. We weren't on a bus. We didn't have a driver driving us around. We didn't have a tour manager telling us where we needed to be when, and we could just sleep on the road. I mean, we were driving overnight, not getting much sleep at all. We were sleeping on people's floors. We were literally from the stage or whatever we were performing on. We would, at the, end of the set, we'd be like, "Hey, if anyone has a place, that you don't mind us staying at, come talk to us." And that's how it works.
Yeah. I guess the reason why I'm smiling about that is just because getting into, the scene or whatever in the early 2000s, when that kind of stuff was still like, you would get to know bands, right? And more like you'd go and see them, like, you would talk to them and be like, "Hey, if you need a place to stay," like, because you're obviously not staying at like the Ritz-Carlton or something, right? Like you guys, there's like 6 people in a van, but there was an intimacy within that I relish, because I feel like you don't necessarily get that now, or that I have seen, like in terms of different music scenes. I mean, there are places that spring up with local scenes, but it just feels, I guess, different. It felt special kind of at that time. And speaking of the camaraderie, like, it's interesting that could pull you guys together, because for some bands it would pull them apart, right? Like, so how did you guys, there must have been something in the chemistry of just who you guys were as people. I think of like when I've been in bands, trying to keep 3 or 4 people on the same page, in good spirit, and all on the same kind of like level, it was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
So like, what was it about you guys, or like what kind of glued you guys together? Was it your personalities? Was it like a goal that you guys had, or all the above? Like, what was it about?
Yeah, I don't think, I don't think there was never any set goals, right? I think we all had our sort of individual goals of, we just want to go play music, and, but I think, ultimately, I mean, and listen, you become brothers out there, and brothers fight.
Right.
And brothers fuck with each other. We would, I think poor Chris, we picked on him quite a bit, but I've had my fair share. But you get on each other's nerves. But I think the good thing, the things that I when I think back at those times, what really makes me smile is how much humor was in that band. And how funny I think those other guys are. Not like
I know.
it's meant as a
Yeah.
compliment,
Yeah.
but there was always a lot of jokes. There's always a lot of inside jokes. Um, we went on tour, our first European tour. We went with the Get Up Kids, and it was the Get Up Kids and Braid, a driver, a tour manager, and like a merch person, and we were all in one van.
Oh, wow.
Now, granted, it was a bigger van. It was like a proper Sprinter van, which you see all the time now, but
Sure.
back then we didn't have those types of vans here. But yeah, it was a bigger van, but yeah, we were all crammed in there. And I mean, that's insane. When I think about that now, like I don't want to do that right
Right.
now. In my
Yeah.
life, I do not want to do that. That to me sounds like a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
But at the time, when you're 21, 22, whatever it was, I mean, we had the time of our lives.
It's an adventure,
And
right?
yeah, and those Get Up Kids would bicker, because they had been together as a band for, years and grew up with each other, and so they get on each other's nerves, and we would just kind of sit and kind of, laugh about it, but then, we'd all have our moments, but ultimately it's the humor, right? And you just you crack jokes and you find yourself in really interesting situations. And I mean, there was a show we did in Italy somewhere, and we played a squat, and it's basically an abandoned building, and there's no windows, and it's winter, and that's where we slept. And the stage, they actually had a stage, it was concrete, and we slept on the stage. And so when we would go on tour, we would bring sleeping bag, pillow. But I remember being fully clothed. I think I put on 2 pairs of socks. I had gloves on, my hat, a hoodie, a jacket. I'm in my sleeping bag, and I'm sleeping on a stage in a old ass abandoned building in Italy with no windows, and it's wintertime. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's cool, like to
You
have those
these
kind of stories.
now. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And like, we all went through that, right? So that helps the bond, right? None of us were alone in that. We were all together in it. And, we were doing it by our own choice. No one was holding a gun to our head saying, you have to sleep here tonight. It's part of the deal.
Yeah.
But that's what we chose to do. That was just what it was, and it was awesome.
Was the term emo around at that time? Because like
Yeah.
Okay, because Braid kind of gets slapped for better or for worse or whatever as like as some of like the forefathers, whatever of Midwest emo or whatever. Like, was that what? How did you feel about having that label? Did you guys intend like was that just a label that was coming up at that time, or was it kind of like afterwards that you felt you guys kind of may have been labeled on that?
No, it was definitely at the time. I think it started out kind of loose. It was that's just sort of what it was, Midwestern emo, or because we all knew of bands from DC that we all, like all of us loved and listened to, some of those bands, Rites of Spring and Embrace. And, we all grew up listening to that kind of stuff. And I think we had heard that name used for them. And then it was being thrown around for us. And we used to kind of say it as a joke.
Yeah.
And then, people were using it in print. And I think at first I don't think we really cared for it.
Sure.
I don't know why any of us would have been offended by that, other than the fact that it was like, well, we don't need a title. We don't need a genre, like, but people want to know, like, it's
right.
what kind of music are you into? Like, you want to think of a genre as the answer. I'm into pop. I'm into punk. I'm into rap. I'm into metal. So it has to be, you kind of have to, there has to be a genre.
Right.
And someone else, I don't know who came up with it. I don't know who started calling our bands at the time emo, but really, I mean, after all these years, it really did make sense. It was pretty fucking emotional music.
Right.
It was either on, all of those bands could write songs that were either a little bit sappy, and talking about hugs from boys and, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Or it could be a little angsty, so it really, if emo just is short for emotional, I suppose. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us really cared for the title for whatever reason.
To you guys, what were you making? Like, what genre would you even consider yourself?
I mean, I don't know. Now, I think, well, that's it. Midwestern emo. That's what it was. Midwest emo. But that's really what it was. There's subgenres, post punk, or I don't know, man. It's hard to keep up. And I know there have been people out there who have made documentaries about this kind of stuff, and I think when I've seen those documentaries, it all makes sense, but it's not something I need to I don't need to call it emo. But then it's funny because there was we're all a little bit like, oh no, we're not emo, back in the day. And then we sort of embraced it. We're like, okay, fine, we are.
Right.
Okay, then that's what it is. Okay, done. We figured it out, or someone figured it out for us, and we are emo. We're Midwest emo. That's what it is. And then fast forward to when bands like Taking Back Sunday and My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy and some of those bands. By the way, I was out. I was on Warped Tour when a lot of that stuff was 2005. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You think those bands are emo?
That's third wave emo or mall core emo.
Yeah. But really, and I take no offense to it. It was just a little confusing.
Sure. Yeah.
But, those bands took on the title of emo, the genre of emo, and that is what that is. So there have been people before, that have asked me about my band, whether it's coworkers or people I've just met, whatever, and they don't know Braid, they don't know me, they don't know any of that stuff, and they're like, "Oh, what kind of music were you guys like? What genre?" And I'd say it was emo, like Midwest emo. I don't know. It feels weird for me to say that.
Right. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
And these people, they're like, oh, like My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy, and I'm like, nope, not even a little. But the one thing I will say is that I toured with a lot of those bands, My Chem and Taking Back Sunday and a lot of those. And what was kind of funny to me and it's also surprising is when I first met a lot of those guys, a lot of those band guys. One or two of them would come up and be like, "Hey, man, just want to tell you, we're huge fans of Braid."
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Growing up in high school, we knew about you guys. We'd listen to your record and then go to band practice and whatever. So that was really kind of cool to hear, And so I was like, okay, I suppose you can have the title of emo. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't have to give anyone permission. But yeah, it's really funny. I don't know that the term and it everyone's got a different view and opinion about it. So
I mean, I was going to say, like, for some people when they're playing, they're just like, I'm in a rock band, right? Like, and that's I'm just playing music, and if somebody dubs it as this, then that's what they dub it. But like, I'm just here to play music. Like,
yeah.
Is that kind of how you guys felt?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I think when we first started hearing that word being thrown around, we're like, well, what does that mean? Right. Like, who gives a shit? We're just playing music.
Right.
Why does there have to be a genre,
Yeah.
But then you start, realizing that, when you're putting out records and people are reviewing it and, like, sure, if it's just like a zine, like a zine that some kid is doing in Davenport, Iowa, or what, some random, like, he doesn't really care to title, put a stamp, a genre stamp on reviewing our 7-inch. But then I think once you start getting into like, Alternative Press or Spin Magazine or Rolling Stone or, some of the bigger, they have to, right? Just for what they have to. So,
yeah.
But yeah, to us, we were just playing music. That's all we cared about doing. We didn't give a shit about, whether we were punk, rock, emo, post-punk. didn't matter to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who were some of your like favorite brands to tour with around that time?
Well, we toured a lot with the Get Up Kids.
Okay.
So we took them out on their very first like US tour. They'd already been a band. They, played around and they'd done some touring, but so we went around the US and did a lot of shows with them, and that was 90. I think the first time so it would have been 97. So we did a lot of US tours with them. Like Get Up Kids, Ethel Meserve, Rainer Maria. There's a great band out of Milwaukee called Compound Red. We all toured together, and we've got a lot of great photos of shenanigans, people hanging out the van as we're driving down the road. And, but yeah, Get Up Kids, we did a lot of stuff with. We toured the US quite a bit, and then they had been already working on booking a European tour. And as we were on tour together, they're like, hey, why don't you guys come to Europe with us? And so we did that. We did like 6 weeks in Europe or something like that. But we played a lot of shows with those guys. And there's a whole slew of bands, if I think about that time, again, Compound Red, Rainer Maria, Sweet the Leg Johnny from Chicago. And, we play all these little, festivals and such. And there's just a lot of good times there. Promise Ring, which, by the way, so when I was telling you the story about when I was my first band, I was 11.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Dan and I, it's Dan Didier, who's the drummer of Promise Ring.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
Him and I, our first bands were with each other.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a cool little fact.
So it was always fun, being out on the road with Braid, and then we'd go play some shows with Promise Ring, and it's just like, here we are.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
Has it been cool, I guess? Because I think people would definitely name Braid as a big influence on on a lot of bands. I think would say that. I mean, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but like, I think
Right.
Braid is kind of known like within the scene as a big influence. And what's that?
Right.
What's that like for you to hear that?
I mean, it's awesome. It's really cool. It really means a lot, because whenever someone comes to me and says, dude, your band influenced me, it influenced my drumming, whatever, whether it's someone from Taking Back Sunday or Mike Kim or whoever it is, it immediately puts me back in this spot when I was a teenager, and I used to sit in my room and listen to Jawbox.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was, right? And I was influenced by those people. And then when I finally got a chance to talk to, some of the guys in those bands that I used to listen to over and over and over, and tried to learn their drum parts. And I was given the opportunity to tell them, hey, your music means a lot to me, heavily influenced by your drumming, or heavily, whatever it was. So when someone says that to me, it immediately takes me back to me being influenced by someone else and what that actually means. And it means a great deal. And it means that maybe perhaps they listened to my drumming and our band's records in their bedroom when they were a teenager, on repeat. Yeah. And in the car when they're going hanging out with their friends. And, that it's weird, but it's really rewarding and really cool to know that people have found our music, to be enjoyable enough to sort of cement those memories. Yeah. And, be influenced by us. It's kind of,
I tease, so I had Steve Lemos on the podcast a couple of years ago, but I tease, he's a fantastic guy. Like, we kind of Instagram forth with each other, but I'll tease him sometimes, and it's like somebody will be like, "This is my idol," and I'll be like, "How does it feel to be somebody's idol?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I think he said something like, "Well, it's a false idol." It's really kind of funny too, like kind of going back a little bit about what you were saying. Like, I find Steve's drumming really unique too, right?
Yep.
With all different time signatures. And if I'm correct, I don't think he had drum lessons either. Like I think
I don't know.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he didn't have drum lessons either. And I
Yeah.
kind of think about the same thing about would his drumming be as unique,
Yeah.
if he would had those
Yeah,
lessons,
possibly. I do kind of feel like he had trumpet lessons.
Yes, he did.
I could be wrong about that. I don't know that to be a fact, but that just seems like an instrument that you just, I don't know, maybe you just pick it up.
Yeah.
I guess you can do that with any instrument. You can just kind of pick it up and figure it out at some point. But yeah, I mean, and there's another drummer from that, sort of that Champaign area, American football,
Yeah.
I mean that that was definitely around the Braid time, and it was just that one record, and then that was it, and it was.
Well, he said like
for a while.
he would go and see you guys and you guys play and stuff like that, and like that was really cool for it, like to be kind of in that scene, kind of as
I think he toured. I think he toured with Braid before me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I recall hearing stories from the guys about that, and I know there's a photo somewhere, and I've seen it somewhat recent, so it might be in. For all I know, it might be in the new frame and canvas artwork. But there's a photo of the guys in the band, and Steve, I think, is shirtless, laying on the loft in the van.
Nice.
So yeah, I think he had toured with those guys. I think they're just buds, and he wanted to come out, and yeah.
So when did I guess like how did Braid disband, and what was that like?
Yeah, I think there was just some conflicts of interest, and I also feel like, really, I think we kind of burnt ourselves out.
Sure.
To an extent, because of all the touring we had been doing. It was just a grind, and it's probably, and we've heard them, people have flat out told us before, and not in a rude way, but they're like, that just didn't seem like the best time for you guys to break up. Like that record had come out, a year prior, and it got out there.
Yeah.
Like people had it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were, and like, yeah, that is very true. But yeah, we just kind of, obviously it's no secret. It's not like Bob, Todd, and myself grew apart or had issues with each other, because we turned right around and started Hey Mercedes after that. But yeah, I mean, it's just, everyone was just in a little bit of a different space. And it just felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It just, we're like, let's just do it. I mean, I don't ever have, I don't have regrets in life. But it's like only time and the experience of time and what you get from it 10, 20 years after the fact, after something has happened, that you have the full perspective. And yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, it'd be great to go back and say, well, let's not break up. Let's just keep doing this. But but I don't dwell on that. And I don't think any of us do dwell on that, because sure. I think we're all believers and everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to break up at that time, and we were supposed to, the three of us were supposed to start Hey Mercedes and give that a shot. And Chris was supposed to go do the fire band, and do his solo stuff. And that's just what it was. And, but luckily enough, we're able to still to this day get back together.
Yeah.
And
you guys got back together quite a bit, right?
Yeah. Over the years, we, because I think, we broke up in 99, and then we did a reunion tour 5 years later, which,
I saw you guys on that tour. Yeah. With Minus the Bear.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jersey. Yeah.
That was a fun tour.
Yeah. It was cool.
But our whole idea on that was like, well, let's just go out. Let's do it. Let's have fun with it. we weren't writing a new record. We weren't worried about, releasing something and what are people going to say about it. And we were just going out to play music, and it was so much fun. It was so like, it was just free, it was, but yeah, and then we're like, okay, well, then we're done, right? We're going to do this reunion tour and then we're done. And then ultimately what we ended up deciding, we're like, well, why do we have to be done? Why don't we, if there comes a time in our lives where we feel like doing something, or if it's on an anniversary of a record or whatever, if it's something we all want to do, then let's go ahead and do it, but if someone has an idea and says, hey, I'd love to go do a tour. And if any one of us, even if it's just one person, if 3 members of Braid are down to do something, but one of us is not, we don't do it. We don't push the issue. I mean, the 3 people are into it are going to try to really sell it and be like, well, but look at it this way. But, we've always been a very democratic band in that sense. Like, we're a democracy. We have to all agree before we do something. So yeah, it's fun now. We can do it. We can not do it. There's a lot of freedom in that,
it sounds like.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we're gonna play a show this year. Actually, it's not announced yet, but we're gonna go do like 1 or 2 shows. I thought we were kind of done because we kind of did the Frame & Canvas 25th anniversary tour in 23, and last year, we played some festivals. We went to Japan in March of last year. We did Best Friends Forever last year, and I kind of thought that was about it. But something came up, and we're going to do it. Cool. And I don't know when this podcast is going to air, and maybe it'll be announced by then. But yeah, it's just fun to be able to have that freedom. We can just do something if we want,
Yeah, and Hey Mercedes is playing Best Friends Forever Festival, right, this year?
Yeah. That's
freaking lineup, man.
I know.
That's amazing. I love Hey Mercedes. And how long did you guys wait until you started on that project?
Not long at all. Like, we were right away. We did. We started pretty much right after Braid ended.
Did you know how you wanted it to sound? Because obviously it comes off a little more poppier, so to speak, and kind of more like structured songs. Like, did you guys have that intent when you started, or was it just kind of like, oh, let's just see what kind of goes out?
So there was a bit of an intent on sort of the sound we were trying to go for. And I think ultimately what we talked about is like, okay, we love the Braid stuff. It's quirky. It's weird time signatures, and it's, some screaming, here and there. Let's not do that, right? Let's not have that be the focus. And maybe let's do something a little bit poppier. We just wanted to try it, and just do something a little bit different. And, to be completely honest, there was that level of, okay, if we are going to do something different from Braid, then let's try to really give it a go. Like, let's see what kind of record label we might be able to get on, and let's see what kind of big tours we can get on. And ideally, we can go on tour, and at some point, hopefully we can get ourselves into a tour bus and like play bigger shows and bigger venues. And let's just try something different. We've already done the van tour. Half of us is sitting in our boxer shorts in the van going through the desert because the AC doesn't work.
Right.
Like, it was fun while we did it, but maybe we don't like that anymore, Yeah. And so, there was that sort of intent on what we wanted Hey Mercedes to be. And, we introduced, another guitar player into it that, he didn't play in bands like Braid. He played more rock, and, just like he was a little bit more of a rock guitar player.
Yeah.
And we love that idea, and And so so that was the idea there. And that's really ultimately why that band sounded the way it did. Is because there was an intention on making it different than Braid. We didn't want Braid 2.0. I mean, we always got that because 3 of the 4 members of Braid were in this band.
Right.
But we didn't, musically, we didn't really
Very different
want
sound.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't want we didn't want the first Hey Mercedes record to be, basically the next Braid record. Right. We did want it to be different. And yeah.
What do you remember about making the Quality Revenge at Last music video?
Oh, man. Well, so we shot it in California, in LA, and it wasn't like, I don't remember what time of year it was, but it wasn't like hot out. It was okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that water got cold. Yeah.
Did you actually do it through a car wash, or was it like on a platform that you guys pulled or something like that? Or
so it was not an actual car wash. I think if you really, if you've seen the video, there's elements that would give it away that it's not a legit car wash. But the video director, they built a makeshift car wash, and it was really like a car wash, and they set us up on a U-Haul flatbed trailer, and they drove slowly through it. So we were actually going through it.
Yeah, it's a great music video.
Thank you. It's so funny. I can't help but laugh.
I always thought like, and I because I have different social media platforms, but like I did a thing on like bands I thought should have been bigger, and Hey Mercedes was one of them. I thought you guys should have been much bigger than you actually were.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you guys got some pretty good. I mean, you toured with like Saves the Day. You guys were on Vagrant, right?
Yeah,
as well. And
yeah.
Like, did you feel like your success in that band? Like, did you the goals that you set? Did you feel like you made them or accomplished them?
Yeah, I think initially, especially that first record, absolutely. I mean, I think we couldn't have asked for anything better. I mean, one of our first tours was with Jets to Brazil, and we toured with Dashboard Confessional, and we toured with Jimmy Eat World, and it Saves the Day, and I mean, we were so like, we're like, yeah, this is where we want to be. This is awesome, and this is incredible that this is happening. I think after that record, I mean, we had a lot of fun making the next record, Loses Control. We had a lot of fun writing it, and that one was, we actually went and we went up to a cabin in northern Wisconsin, and we locked ourselves in for, I don't remember how long, a week, 2 weeks, something like that. We brought some recording gear, and we wrote the record there. Like, that was it.
Awesome.
I mean, we'd literally, be playing music until 2 a.m, and then we'd wake up and have a little snack, and someone might be downstairs strumming along to something, and the rest of us would have our coffee or whatever, and we'd be like, that's cool. Yeah. Let me go down there. Let's work on that. And so, that part was fun. But then I think the process of, because I was managing Hey Mercedes. When we first started out, we're like, okay, we're gonna get a manager and a booking agent and record label and all this stuff, and we weren't really sure who we wanted as a manager, because Braid, we had a manager towards the end, and it was Kim Coletta, the bass player of Jawbox. Mm-hmm. And so she managed us for a little bit towards the end of Braid. And then I don't remember, I think we'd asked her to manage Hey Mercedes, maybe, and maybe she was busy. I don't remember, or maybe we wanted something different. But anyways, I was like, listen, why don't I do it? We're going to record this EP. We're going to send the EP out to labels. And, we made that very clear with Polyvinyl. Like, hey, would you guys want to put this EP out? But just know that we're going to use this EP to send out to labels. And,
sure.
And they're like, yeah, cool. Whatever you guys want to do. And so I managed the band for like the first 3 years, 3 out of 4 years. And the last year, which is when we did Loses Control, we brought in another manager, and clearly it didn't work. I mean, he helped us, find new producers, because we're just like, well, let's go, we've already worked with Jay Robbins. We did a record with Braid with Jay Robbins. We did the first Hey Mercedes record with Jay Robbins. Let's just try something different. Nothing against Jay. He's great.
Yeah.
But let's go try something different. And also, speaking of intent, I mean, we really did have that. We talked about Loses Control. We want to write hits. Like, we actually said those words, like, let's write a song that we could see being on the radio. And, we had a man. What's that?
It's catchy. That's for sure. Yeah. Like all the songs from Hey Mercedes was very catchy.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And so we really wanted to make an effort on it. And, we got these great producers who had done a bunch of, great records. We went out to Boston and recorded that record, and that was all fun. But then, it got, I don't know. I don't know if it's the record didn't do much, or I don't know what happened, but it just kind of slipped away. And then, we found ourselves in debt, and we found ourselves taking support slots for like $250 a night. And it just, I don't know. It just got a little weird, and we were trying to grind, and we really thought we were, having a go at it, and we're putting everything we had into it, and it just didn't seem like it was paying off for us. And it just became not fun anymore.
Yeah.
So
it was for me, it was a bummer, because I had just gotten the Lose Control CD. I don't think I had Every Night Fireworks, but I think I was just starting to get into Hey Mercedes, and then you guys broke up, and I was like, God damn it. It was like a band that I really wanted to see, but those albums, like I said, I think it should have been way bigger than it actually was.
Thank you. Yeah.
Man, made such good.
I agree. No, I'm just kidding.
Good music. Yeah. Yeah. And so you guys kind of get done with Hey Mercedes. Well, you guys are obviously playing Best Friends.
Yeah.
Forever Festival. When was the last time you guys played before that?
I think it was 2017.
Okay.
I believe. And I think that was in Japan. We went to Japan, but 2016, I think, is when we did. I think it was Every Night Fireworks 15-year anniversary. I believe, was that it? 2016, I think. And so we did some shows around that, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah, so we, like I said, we just got, over the last 2 years, we kind of got done doing the Braid stuff, and Todd, Bob, and I, and then Mike, our other guitar player, we started texting with each other, and the Hey Mercedes group text, and we're like, hey, want to maybe play some shows? And so we don't have anything. There's no anniversary right now. I think next year is 25 year anniversary of Every Night Fireworks, I believe. Well, I don't know where time has gone, but but yeah. So, we just feel like playing shows. You know, it's just something different, something fun, and why
Did you
not?
guys get an offer to play that festival, or was it something that okay?
Yeah, Braid played it last year, and last year was the festival's inaugural year, and we had a blast. It's such a fun festival. I know. I think the vast majority of people, patrons who went to that festival, had a blast as well. But I think all of us bands had a blast, because it was really like the fun high school reunion you actually want to go to.
Yeah.
Right. You're not nervous about seeing anyone. You're excited about it, and we got to reconnect with our friends in the Get Up Kids and Raina Maria, and we got to see bands that we don't normally see, and we got to, say hi to the American Football guys. And I had not seen Sunny Day Real Estate since they got back together.
Okay.
I'd seen them years ago in a club when they were like, when Diary had come out, but I hadn't seen him in forever. So yeah, that was great. That was a lot of fun. And we were backstage and some friends of ours who were helping kind of put together a list of bands for this year. And I was like, listen, if there's any room or any interest, if you wouldn't mind adding Hey Mercedes to that list that you have going, that would be awesome. And we don't expect anything, right? Sure. We're not expecting to get the call or get the offer, but thankfully we did. And it's just going to be so much fun, but it's going to be so much fun. It's been a lot of fun in our Hey Mercedes group text, chatting with all the guys and going through stuff. And I can't wait until we actually get together to start practicing and, and yeah, it'll be a lot of fun to play those. And then we're going to play more shows. That's the only show we have planned for this year. Mm-hmm. But there will be more in 26. We're going to try to get back over to Japan and then do some US stuff. And then I can't really say much about what else we're working on, but we are working on some release stuff, not a new record. We're not writing new music, and not to say that we won't at some point maybe make new music, but as of now, that's not really in the cards, but we are actively working on some pretty cool stuff that I think will be a lot of fun. Awesome. Yeah. And so, there'll be more info about that. Hopefully soon.
Well, I hope to see you guys. If I'm going to go, I'm kind of go. We just bought a house, so I'm trying to convince my wife, like, can I go to this festival?
Yeah.
But it's funny because I don't have a lot of people around me who listen to the same types of music that I do. So, like, I went with friends to Furnace Fest, like the very first. In 2021, which is fantastic. That was like a high school reunion for a lot of the bands there too.
Totally.
And so I was like, I don't know if I have to go to this by myself, I guess I will. Because like there's just so many bands that are just like I've wanted to see. And it kind of, what that Taking Back Sunday, My Chemical Romance era, like was definitely into, but was still into the bands before that, right? That were influenced. Yeah. So it's like, a lot of my friends are like, well, I know Taking Back Sunday, My Chemical Romance, these bands I'm not so much like into, but I'm like, right. That's my deal right there.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. It looks awesome. I wanted to say congrats on your sobriety.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's an amazing, cool thing. How long have you been sober for?
Just a little over 2.5 years.
Congrats. That's
deal. It's huge. I mean, luckily to this point, which when I first started that journey, I couldn't have imagined being sober 2.5 years. Like I didn't know what that would look like. And I think that was one of the scariest parts of admitting that you have a problem and trying to do something about it. Because it's just, you're just so used to that. Right. Yeah. I was used to waking up and having a drink and, and so I didn't know what that was going to look like. And, looking back, what I was hoping for at the beginning of the sobriety journey, I was hoping that I would get to a point at one point in my life where I can go a day without thinking about alcohol. And so now I don't think about it at all. Yeah. Like I don't, because it's not a part of my life. And if it ever gets brought up, it's, I can talk about it. Cause I've had people, ask me if they're drinking near me, they're like, hey, does this bother you? Is this going to like, I'm like, no, it's totally fine. You can get fucking hammered. Yeah. Right in front of me. And there's never going to be a point where I'm looking at you thinking, I want that. I want that. I want to be silly drunk. And then I also want the hangover tomorrow That's what I want.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. Like, luckily for me, I've gotten to that point where I don't think about that. If I ever do think about alcohol, it's these kind of times when people ask me about it.
Right.
And they ask if it's weird or if it's uncomfortable or do you like it or whatever. And I think it's very healthy to also talk about and reminisce about the times when I was drinking, especially the problematic times, the times where I don't remember what happened.
Yeah.
The times when I was just miserable, like really miserable the next morning. I think it's healthy to think about those times because it's a reminder of the shit I don't want.
Right.
Right. I don't want that anymore.
How did you start that journey for yourself? Like, was there a specific point that you were like, I need to do something about this? Or
yeah, it was it was, I think, day 5 of a bender. I was just going hard, and I'm married. I have a wife, and we live together, and I was just a happy drunk, I guess, functional alcoholic, functional drunk. But it was like 5 days in a row. And I just got to a point, and really so what happened for me is it was a Monday morning and I woke up fairly early. And I went downstairs. My wife was still sleeping and I poured myself a drink like 6:30 in the morning. And at 10 a.m. that morning, I had a Zoom call with my therapist. And this was a makeup call because the last one we were supposed to have, I canceled on her because I was drunk at 10 in the morning. And so here I am. I've already been drinking since 6:30. And I'm thinking to myself, I got to cancel, right? I can't like this. I got to cancel. And I don't know what happened, but I told myself, or not, like, just have the call. Like, you probably should talk to your therapist because this is all the shit that you're dealing with, right? All the stuff I was dealing with, I wasn't telling her. What's the point of having a therapist if you can't open up and be honest about the problems you're having?
right.
Or the issues, whatever. And I always knew. I mean, I knew that I wasn't being honest with her. I wasn't talking about my drinking because I knew that the drinking was a problem. But you don't want to admit it. You can admit it to yourself, but you don't ever want to admit it to someone else.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that Monday morning, I was like, fuck it. I'm going to have the call. And we did. It was a Zoom call. And I went out in my car and I had the video off. Normally we can see each other, but I had the video off. And she's like, oh, hey, how's it going? I'm like, not good. And I just broke down and I told her what was going on. And I said, I just, I want to open up. I want to go back inside the house and I want to tell my wife that I have a problem and I need help. And that's exactly what I did. And she got right on it and she started reaching out and calling around. And ultimately we ended up finding a treatment facility here in Nashville. And I went there for 30 days and I did a 30-day program. Now, I didn't know how long it was going to be. So when we got it all set up and okay, cool. You're going to be here around 5:00. That's our latest check-in. So that gave us time to kind of figure shit out. And, but yeah, so we went and I was like, I packed a couple shirts and boxers and, whatever, just basic stuff. I thought like, man, maybe a week I'll be here.
Yeah.
And, I got in that day. I didn't sleep at all. I basically what happened, so I had been drinking all day. Even when my wife is trying to find treatment facilities, I'm actively drinking. And we were like ready to leave and walk out the door. And she's like, oh, I got to go grab something upstairs. And there's a cabinet above my fridge. I used to keep a bottle of whiskey up there.
Mhm.
She went up there and like, I would always like sneak it. She knew it was there, but like, I didn't want her to know that I was sneaking it. But she ran upstairs. But this is moments before we're leaving. She ran upstairs and I took a huge swig of Jack Daniels, and then we left. And so I got in, and my blood alcohol was like 2 or 3 times the legal limit. And so basically that whole night I didn't sleep. I essentially had a gigantic panic attack. And I just had to live through it, and they would come in every, 30 minutes to an hour and check my blood pressure and check my vitals and all that stuff. And because they don't want, it's like you can die from, detoxing.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And they don't know how bad it is. They know, they saw me come in, they know what my blood alcohol level was. So they, it was a very fucked up situation. The next morning, the counselor guy or someone came in and like, all right, you ready? I was like, I didn't sleep at all, but okay, what are we doing? And so we go into his office, and he's like going through, talking about the place and whatever and all this stuff. And he's like, do you have any questions for me? I'm like, yeah. How long is the program? He's like, well, we want everyone to stay the full length, which is 30 days. And I was like, what? 30 days? I have a job. I have, like, what the fuck? And so, but I was like, okay, there it is. And I did it, and it's fucking awesome. It's great.
I'm glad as someone who suffered from panic attacks and pretty acute anxiety myself. It's awful. And it takes a lot of, as a therapist myself.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah, I'm a therapist. Yeah. And I have been for 12 years. Like, it takes a lot of courage, not only to admit that you have this problem, but even to go to a treatment facility, I think.
Yeah.
It takes a boatload of courage to get to that space and also commit to it as well, and I know how awful anxiety can be. I know how awful like that experience is. And it's, I don't know what I want to say in that way as something that like I can relate in that sense. When you said I had a massive panic attack for like, it's one of the most god awful things in the world, So, but I just think, getting to get yourself to a treatment center and committing to that is like a ginormous act of bravery, I think. You know what I mean? One of the things that I say to people when they're first coming to counseling is that, like, I think it's one of the bravest acts that you can do, like, to be vulnerable with somebody, and it just takes a lot of courage to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, to me, the opposite of courage is that kind of, mentality of grin and bear it and pretend, is okay. Like, it takes balls to be open, and honest about things.
Well, I think the reason I kind of threw my hands up and said, okay, I'm willing to admit and I'm willing to do something about it. I think that courage was a decent amount of liquid courage.
Sure.
Right. Had I been sober, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
And also when we called the facility, they said, okay, do you want to come in, today, or do you want to, check in tomorrow morning? I said, no, today. We're going today. If it doesn't happen today, it's not happening tomorrow. I'm going to wake up sober tomorrow, hungover, and I'm afraid. I don't know. But I was afraid. I got to so that's how bad it got for me, right? Everyone has their bottom. Mine, compared to some other people that I'd met in treatment, my bottom was pretty shallow.
Yeah.
And or cushioned.
Yeah.
I didn't lose my job. I didn't lose my license. I didn't lose my home, my family, loved one. I didn't Luckily I didn't have that, but I had enough, there was enough issues internally that I just couldn't do it anymore. And speaking of the panic attacks and anxiety, I used to take alprazolam for that. There was a low dose, but I took it because there were some episodes where I'd had panic attacks so bad I didn't know what it was, especially the first time. I really didn't know what it was. And I went to the emergency room, and then it happened again, and I went to the emergency room, and that's, and they'd done CT scans and urinalysis and blood work, and they're trying to figure out what is going on. EKG was perfect. So here I am thinking I'm probably having a heart attack, but these people are telling me I'm not. And I'm like, what? You have to be wrong. It's
a very common experience. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So I used to take the alprazolam, which is, it's a benzo, right? And so when I went into treatment, and we have a doctor, who specializes in addiction and alcohol and drugs and all that stuff, and has written books on it, and he's talking to me, and he's asking me about the anxiety and panic attacks, and when do they come on, and how bad are they, and what am I taking, and whatever. And when I was in there, I was having, anxiety, and some panic attacks. That first night, 100% full blown for like hours. It was like a 6-hour long panic attack. It was fucking miserable. But so then he explained to me how I can't take alprazolam anymore. And I can't take drugs like that, because I was asking for it. I'm like, why can't I have this?
Right.
I have a prescription. Why can't I have this? I need it. And then that's when he finally went through and medically and chemically told me why I can't have it as an alcoholic, trying to, free myself from the addiction of alcohol, and why I really can't ever take that ever again. And I can't take, I used to take Ambien, and why I can't have that, and once he laid it out, and it's pretty early. I was probably within the first week of me being at treatment, and I had, 3 more weeks to go. And he starts explaining this to me, and I'm like, okay, so what you're telling me is I'm in here to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah.
So I've got to kick alcohol, and I've got to somehow figure out how to deal with my anxiety and not be reliant or dependent on drugs. And I really never thought I'd say this, but 2.5 years I've been sober, and I haven't had an ounce of anxiety or panic since.
Wow.
The alcohol is gone, but also sort of the mindset, right? That 30 days in there allowed me the time to reevaluate myself and figure out who I was and why I used to drink as much as I did, and why I don't want to drink now, and how, like, I just find better, I feel like I always had the tools to be organized, to stay ahead of things so that you don't get stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
I always prided myself. I always thought I was pretty good at it, but obviously I wasn't that great at it because I was still dealing with anxiety and panic attacks. Obviously the alcohol didn't help. If anyone out there, listening to this knows, the science, and the chemicals in your body, what happens when your alcohol starts going down, and those levels start going down, and what happens to your fight or flight. So that's where anxiety comes from, and that's why my doctor asked me, when did you usually have panic attacks or anxiety? And it was always the morning after heavy drinking.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But
because it's your GABA receptors, right? That you're kind of suppressing. That's what benzos do as well.
Yeah.
That kind of excitability neuron that.
Yeah. So really the way it was explained to me, in the best way that it made sense and still makes sense to me, is if you think about it as like, if you've ever looked at like an audio board or something with some sort of like audio gauge, excuse me, some sort of gauge, right? Where it goes up and it comes down, right? If it hits the red, it means it's really loud. If it's down in the green, it's really quiet, right? So if you think about your levels, so you've got your sort of fight or flight, and then you've got, what alcohol does to you. Once the alcohol starts wearing off and you start relaxing a little bit more, so that level goes down. But your fight or flight, that the chemicals in your body that cause that and will trigger that stays elevated. That hangs out, and because it does. It hangs out a lot longer. And so when that alcohol is, you're kind of at your highest and you're buzzed, or you're drunk and you don't feel anything. You don't know what, you're not noticing that stuff. You're not noticing your heart racing.
Sure.
You're not noticing. But when that alcohol starts to wear off, that's when your body starts noticing. It starts hearing your heartbeat, and you can feel it in your throat, and you can feel it in your temples, and you start freaking the fuck out.
Yeah.
And that's a panic attack, and that's anxiety. And so anyways, I learned all this new shit, and I was like, all right, well, cool. I guess I'm going to kick alcohol and kick anxiety. I don't know how that's going to work, but it did, right? So again, I was able to kind of reset to an extent, and to just to learn a little bit more about me. So even though I can work in what some people might consider a high stress environment, I don't get stressed out. I don't allow myself to get stressed out. There's a lot of things that are important, and I've got a responsibility with the job that I have to do the right job and to make the right decisions and to be organized and to communicate with people and problem solve and all that stuff, right? And yeah, it used to be stressful to me, but another part of what caused the stress for me was the amount of time I was taking away from my job or away from my personal life in dealing with stuff at home because I was too busy drinking. So then when I would sober up and the next day would come around and I'd look at my to-do list for work and I'd be like, fuck, I'm underwater. I'm so stressed out now. It was all self-inflicted. I used to blame my employer. I used to blame my job on that's what is causing me the stress. That's what is causing me the anxiety. And that was not the case. It was me. It was all self-inflicted. Right. And, the stressful job is not what was making me drink. My employer was not pouring a bottle of wine down my throat. I was.
Yeah.
I was doing that. I had my reasons for doing it. But if I look over to my coworker, he's not doing that. He's not getting drunk every night, every day. So it's not the job. It's not, So that really helped me. That really helped me mentally get in that better place. And now I can enjoy life. I'm not struggling with that.
How do you allow yourself to not get stressed? Like, what does that look like?
Because I don't believe that anything, I don't believe that anything is that important. Right. Again, I take what I do seriously and I take my life seriously. That's why I don't drink. Mm-hmm. If I didn't take myself seriously, who gives a shit, right? I might as well just get hammered every day. I might as well shoot up, big deal, snort a bunch of blow. But I value my life and I value what I have. And so that to me is important. But someone at work screaming at me or, a last minute fire drill. Okay. Yeah. I'm prepared. I'm clear-minded. I will attack this problem. I will problem solve. I will come up with solutions. But at the end of the day, I'm not working in a lab trying to cure cancer. I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm not an emergency room physician. That would be stressful as shit, but I'm not in that line of work for a reason. I don't want that. That's not what I want to do. So I just don't let shit get to me,
Yeah. What do you do now, by the way?
So I'm a production manager for Live Nation.
Okay.
And so I do shows. I put on shows. I do, I'm when a guy like Jason Trabue is production manager for, Sasanta, the Primus Perfect Circle thing, or Garbage, which I've dealt with him on those occasions. He emails me or I email him and say, "Hey, I see you're the guy. Let's advance the show." And he sends me all the riders and I send him all the venue information, and we just go back and forth and we figure out all the details of that day, that show in that city at that venue. We figure out the details of what they need, what we need from them. And then I'm there day of show. And I'm there to oversee it and make sure everything goes smooth, right? Make sure the bands are happy and they are able to load in and set up all their gear and sound check and do VIP and make sure we've got catering to feed everybody and help make sure that, the venue is set and ready to open doors and let thousands of people come in and be entertained for the night. And
is this for one venue?
No, multiple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something that Jason said, I asked him, like, what would you say to your younger self? Like, what is some piece of advice that you would give to your younger self? And one of the things he mentioned was about how hard the music industry was, but he also mentioned about how hard it would be to stay sober. Is one of the things that he mentioned, and he was like, I am, and like, but he didn't really go into too much detail. But he was just like, you're around so much stuff all the time. But that was something he very specifically mentioned, was just like how difficult it has been to remain sober, like in all of that.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that for sure. What's interesting is that I at the age of 18 is when I quit drinking and smoking weed and whatever. Like, I never got into anything super heavy, acid, weed, cigarettes, beer,
Yeah.
But it's at the age of 18 when I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. I just don't. Like, I didn't have to go to treatment. I didn't have to do any of that. I just didn't want to do it. I did it for fun. And that's because what all my other friends were doing. And then I went, so the entire initial run of Braid, right, in the 90s, I was sober. I didn't drink. I didn't do anything. All the other guys did. I was a sober guy. For the first 3 years of Hey Mercedes, I didn't drink. And then one night, it was the last night of a tour, and we were going to a house party, and I didn't think about it. I didn't plan it out. I literally just turned around and I asked Bob what kind of beer he was holding, and I said, "Give me one." And then that was that, and I started drinking. And so yeah, it's pretty, I always thought, oh, that's incredible. I went all those years in those bands and being, surrounded by drinking, but it was definitely different because it was a couple guys in a van, and, we had to drive ourselves around. So we had to be somewhat responsible so we didn't die. Yeah. So it wasn't like total and utter debauchery. Now that 2004 Braid reunion tour with Minus the Bear, 100% debauchery.
Yeah, I can imagine those Minus the Bear. I've talked to Corey on here before, the bass player.
Yeah,
those guys go pretty hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe there's a world where if that band had not been on that tour, it may have been less debauchery.
Sure.
But it's not like they forced us.
Sure. Yeah.
We got along really, really well with those guys. Yeah. So well. I don't think I've gotten along, better with another group of people. I mean, obviously I've got, some very close and best friends here in town that, yes, that's different. I have a very great relationship with them, but we just got along so well with those guys. But yeah, after I started drinking again, and then, Hey Mercedes broke up, I went on tour as a drum tech for, a year or two. And then I was a tour manager for several years. I was drinking then, but I was on a tour bus and we were playing arenas and bigger venues, and so that was really like, that was sort of, oddly enough, my sort of rock star living,
Yeah.
right? Just having that excess around and available. It's always backstage. It's always on the bus. It's all, it's there, and it's just what happens.
Right.
But if you think about any normal job, like you don't go into an office and everyone's just sitting around the water cooler drinking 40 ounces,
Yeah.
like that's not normal. That's not what, but that's the interesting thing about the music industry. But I will say, because of that, that's also why organizations like Music Cares exists. And they played a huge role in my sobriety because they were the ones that recommended this facility.
Mm-hmm.
And they also, and I don't know the dollar amount. No one's ever told me. There's really no reason. And I guess I didn't really ask. I didn't really push it. But whatever my insurance didn't cover, Music Cares picked up the bill.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is incredible. And then they're a nonprofit they're the nonprofit organization of the Grammys. And their main focus is substance abuse, getting people on the road sober. And I mean, it extends into a lot more. I mean, they team up with other, medical professionals, mental health care, dentistry, vision. A lot of people in the music industry don't have insurance or don't have good insurance. Yeah. So they connect with facilities, physicians, what have you. And they get people, the help they need. But yeah, there's a reason that exists, because this industry is it's there, the excess is there and always has been.
Something that I noticed when I stopped drinking, and mostly because I have really bad reflux and alcohol, you have to stop drinking because of that. But it's how much it's kind of ingrained in social life. Just like, let's celebrate. Let's have a beer. Like, or let's go hang out. Let's go to a brewery. Let's do this. Hey, let's go have a drink. Or, everything is kind of centered a lot of the ways around like having a drink, or it's just part of culture. And I didn't necessarily realize how big that was until I wasn't. And not like I didn't care whether or not anybody else did, but it was just kind of like, oh, if I want to hang out with somebody, can't be I'll go and hang out at a brewery, but like that was just what I used to say to people. Like, hey, let's go to the brewery and grab a drink or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even since I've been off the road for many, many years and I don't tour anymore, it's still around, and like when I first moved to Nashville, I mean, I was at a bar like every night, and that's just what you did. Like there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I will say, total side note, and the reason I've been hitting mute is because I think talking all this time, and I've been trying to stay hydrated, but I'm at the tail end of a sinus infection.
Oh, you and everybody else. Me too. So
yeah, today, like I felt so much better yesterday, and I was like, okay, I think I'm going to go into the office today or tomorrow, being today. And then I barely slept last night, and I woke up and I just felt like my head was just, I was like, no, I'm not going to work. I'm going to stay home. And I mean, I feel better now, but it's like still in my head. I can hear it in my voice. And now like all of a sudden it just,
there's something going around. Yeah. Yeah. I totally get you. I mean, I've kept you long enough here, but I really appreciate you talking with me. I hope I might see you in Las Vegas if that ever, or if Hey Mercedes does a run around the West Coast.
Where are you at?
So right now I live in Vancouver, Washington, which is across the river from Portland, Oregon. But we're moving to Bellingham, Washington, which is about an hour and a half from Seattle.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's right by the Canadian border. which is goes back to our first stint of talking about how crazy that is. Yeah, so that's where we live. Yeah.
Yeah, I it's interesting because, like, when the last couple times Braid and Hey Mercedes has toured, we tend to do, and there's a reason for it, but we can never, like, because we all have families and jobs.
Sure.
We can't just go for 4, 5, 6 weeks and go on tour, or do 3 weeks here, 3 weeks there. We really can, like, the most we can really ever squeeze is about 3 weeks.
Sure.
So, like, we try to hit as much as we can. So, like, the last Braid tour we did in 23 was very similar to what, like, the last Hey Mercedes tour was. And that is, we do, like, Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, go out and try to do, like, like a Philly, New York, Boston, DC, something like that. And then we try to hit, somewhere on the West Coast. But, like, last time we went out and we did San Francisco, LA, and we flew to Denver. Then we went and did 3 shows in Texas, and that was the end of our tour, because we'd already done the East Coast.
Yeah. Cali's usually the one that gets hit.
Yeah. But we've definitely talked about going up and trying to do a Seattle or a Portland or both, because we haven't been up there in so long.
Yeah.
But it's like just like trying to figure out, like, we'd love to hit everywhere, but that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
We just don't have the time, So, but yeah, I don't know what Hey Mercedes touring is going to look like exactly. If I had to guess, I would think it would look similar to what the last Braid tour was.
Yeah.
In 2023, where we did Midwest, East Coast, West Coast, maybe Texas, right? But we've definitely we've tossed around the idea of, like, we really do need to go up and hit the Northwest, right?
Of course you do.
We hit the East, Well, yeah, we'll find our way to Florida. We'll go play Fest or something, and so we'll hit Florida. We'll hit the Northeast. We hit West Coast, California, because it's such a big state, and and then we're like, let's hit Texas too. I guess let's give that a shot. And that was great. But yeah, we need to really make a bigger effort to get up to the Northwest.
If you're coming, you got to come during the summertime. Otherwise, it is just rainy all the time.
Yeah.
It really is beautiful up here. I mean, I actually used to live in New Jersey. That was where I was born and raised until I was about 21, I think. And then I had family who moved out here, and right. It's summertime is like, can't ask for anything more, man. Like, you have the mountains, you have, especially in Seattle, like you have Mount Rainier, and then you have the Puget Sound. It's gorgeous.
It's been a while since I've been up that way. I mean, like I said, I haven't toured in many years. So, and there's been no other reason for me to get up there. So, and the only time we can tour is in the summer, because Todd is a school teacher.
Oh, okay.
And he has the summers off.
Yeah.
Summers are typically when I'm a bit busier.
Sure, I would imagine.
But I'm finding more now that, like, as of now, my June and July aren't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
But September, October, November have been a lot busier for me for shows, like a lot more fall tours than summer tours.
Yeah.
So it's definitely interesting. I mean, I do have one venue that I do all the shows there, and it's an amphitheater. So I get all the summer tours, right? And, we do like 20 shows a year, 18 to 20 shows a year. But yeah, summertime is really the only time that we collectively can usually get out and tour. So if Hey Mercedes ends up doing any sort of tour next year, it would be in the summertime.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we can get up there. I think it'd be really cool to
play.
Yeah, it'd be cool to get up there. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, there'll be more Hey Mercedes news to come. Obviously, Best Friends Forever Festival, we're all really excited about that. But yeah, there'll be more stuff for Hey Mercedes, and then like I said, Braid, we're going to play a show or two this summer, and that'll be fun too. And you were saying earlier about like, how does that make you feel when someone says your music influenced them? Like, yeah, the feeling's great. Like, I'm also really like people who come up to us after a show, or, it doesn't happen all the time, but randomly I'll be somewhere and it's just random. And someone will be like, "Hey, is your name Damon? Do you play in, and I'm like, what? Like, dude, I love your music. Um, so similar to that, I enjoy that. I'm not like, oh yeah, I get it all the time. I don't. So when you reached out and you're like, is there, would you be at all interested in doing this? I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, why not? I'll come talk to people. It's fun for me.
When you
And it's also
responded, I was like, oh, shit. Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's fun for me, and the few times that I've done stuff like this, or any sort of podcast or interview, there is always this element of like looking back and taking a walk down memory lane, which is actually enjoyable to me.
Yeah.
Right. I'm fortunate enough, and I think I was doing an interview with Tom Mullen, Washed Up Emo, when we were getting ready to go out and do the Braid tour, and we were releasing the Braid record, and he did like he interviewed all four of us, and I think he also interviewed Jay Robbins and Matt Lunsford from Polyvinyl as well. But anyways, that whole thing, he made the comment like how is it that you guys still want to even talk to each other, let alone, get together and play music and go on tour and sit in a van together and all that stuff. Like you hear so many stories of bands that break up and they end up hating each other and whatever else. And I think there were two things I said, but one of the main things I said, well, I think that the stories we've heard about bands that get into fights, right? Like aggressive fights, even as far as like band members suing each other. It's all because those bands made money. They were fighting over money.
Yeah.
Braid never made any money. We don't have anything to fight about. We're not,
Yeah.
I mean, we have made some money, but it's, that's why we can't tour whenever we want, because we all have real jobs, because we need that money to pay our bills, because the Braid stuff, if anyone out there thinks that Braid is swimming in
getting royalties all over the place, right?
No, sir. No. But yeah, so we never had that, but we enjoy each other. And I think because we didn't have, we bickered like we were brothers, but there was all that humor that we had, and that was important to us. And still to this day, if we get on a Zoom call, or even in our Braid group text, we have a Braid group text and Hey Mercedes group text. In either one of those, there's like, from time to time, there's inside jokes that get thrown out that only we will find funny.
Right. Yeah.
If you read these, you'd be like, I don't know what the fuck that means.
Yeah.
What is that? But it's hilarious to us. Yeah, but we have that, right? And it's
amazing.
Yeah, it's good to have it. So it's fun that we can all still do this. And while we're all still healthy and we actually give a shit and want to do it, then we're going to continue to do it. Maybe there's going to be a 30-year anniversary and a 40-year and I don't know. We're not setting any time limits. And if there ever comes a time where any one of us are just like, I'm out, I'm tapped, I don't want to play these songs ever again, I don't have any interest, then we don't do it. We're not replacing that person.
Right.
I
would think having the freedom to do that too is probably it gives a lot of breathing room to not get burned out by that stuff.
Totally. Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool. I mean, listen, I'm envious of bands like Sunny Day Real Estate or Hot Water Music. Some of those bands that they're touring. I mean, they're like full time.
Yeah.
Hot Water's always on the road. And band, I'm envious of that. Like, I think that's awesome. They can do it. And they really draw crowds. Like people really enjoy going to see them, and they can make that their jobs. I mean, I know some of the other guys have other things that they do, but I'm okay where I'm at. I mean, if for any reason Braid or Hey Mercedes had an opportunity to do a lot more touring, and it worked for all of us, and if it paid the bills, then I would totally do it. I would absolutely be a full-time drummer. Or if any other band wants me to play drums and they're going to be on tour a lot, and they will actually pay my bills, I'm happy to do that as well. I love what I do with Live Nation and being a production manager, and I love the organization of it, and I love problem solving, and I love still being in the music industry, and I get to see a lot of old friends too. I get to see Jason Trabue when he comes through on town or in town. And there's a bunch of other people, and to me that's enjoyable. But listen, if the opportunity presented itself where I could play drums full time, 100%, I'm in.
Yeah. Anybody listening? Damon's your guy.
I mean, it was my first love.
Yeah.
I didn't at 3 years old, I wasn't learning how to be. I didn't want to be a production manager.
Right.
It's not to say that it's a bad job to have, because I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I do enjoy it. There's a lot of it I really, really, really do enjoy. But yeah, drums, playing music. That's just always been my number one since, I was 3 years old.
Have that passion, like, yeah. It's something I think that you find really unique with musicians too, or most creative people, but especially musicians, that like their passion, like lifelong is playing,
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, the key part being paying the bills thing,
Well, yeah, that passion really, passion early on, at least, equated to irresponsibility. Right. Like I remember one time I was on the road, and my girlfriend at the time, this is forever ago, I was talking to her on the phone. She's like, yeah, so a tow truck came and took your car. And I was like, oh, they finally got it. They repoed my car. It was like, I'm on the road, right?
What am I going to do?
But I'm not making enough money to pay my fucking car bill.
Yeah.
And it really, ultimately, I don't even think it was that I didn't have enough money. It's just I was irresponsible.
As we all
that was
like our 20s.
Paying. Yeah, exactly. Paying bills wasn't important to me.
Yeah.
Writing music, and this is Hey Mercedes. This is like probably 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. And, I was just too busy doing my thing. So that passion to play music and be an artist or whatever. For a lot of us musicians, that just equals irresponsibility. I mean, even going back to the substance and the drinking and the debauchery, I mean, that's what it is. I don't live that lifestyle anymore. Right. And I'm okay with that. I'm totally happy with it. Right. I pay my bills on time. I don't have debt collectors, knocking on my door. My car's still in my driveway. Yeah. And I'm pretty convinced it's not going anywhere unless some rando steals it.
Where do you actually live these days?
I'm in Nashville.
Oh, okay.
Tennessee. Yeah. I've been here 15 years.
We're all good music people go to.
Yeah.
To the industry.
I do feel I came at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before it got really, Nashville's really exploded.
I mean, it has. And I still tell this story often. I'll say this and I'll finish with this. But when I first moved here, because of the bands that I toured with and, friends that I had in bands, whenever they would come through town, which was pretty rare, that there was like a really good show I really wanted to see when I first moved here. But, I'd be like, oh, shit, yeah, these guys are on tour and they're going to play Nashville. So I text someone or email someone and be like, hey, man, I see you're coming through. Like, is there any room on the guest list? I'd love to come see you guys and say hi. And their response was always, dude, you are our guest list. We don't know anybody in Nashville.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's room. Do you have like 10 friends you want to bring? Stuff like that. But now, so in my line of work as a production manager, when I'm doing these, oftentimes when I'm on an advance call with the tour, and we're going through all the elements, what you need, how many buses you have, trucks, what, blah, blah, blah. There's always usually somebody that says, all right, heads up, I'm just going to warn you, our guest list is going to be crazy. Like, I hear that all the time. And I'm like, dude, I know.
Yeah.
I live and work in this city. I know how crazy it's become. And everybody, whether it's a tour manager or a manager or an agent or whatever, they all know it. I mean, there's bands who are not from Nashville, and they're managers in LA, and they're in New York, and all of a sudden they're all in Nashville.
Right.
Like, everyone's here. Yeah. And then of course there's all the, the famous people who live in Nashville. So we got to deal with VIPs coming in. They've got, tinted windowed, black Cadillac Escalades that need to pull into the arena. And, it's just, that's what it's become. And it's fine with me. I mean, it's a nice place to work, honestly, but
it's pretty nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty, it is. It's pretty wild. But
all right, Damon. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for
I'll let you know when it's coming on, and I will get the episode to you beforehand. Okay.
Okay. Sweet.
All right, man.
Awesome.
Thanks again. Have a great night.
Yeah, you too, man. Thank you.
Bye.
Well, that does it for the show.